Thank you.
Y la de todos, la Secretaría de Cultura y el Bosque de Chapultepec te invitan a colaborar con las siguientes medidas en caso de emergencia. Identifica las rutas de evacuación y las salidas de
Identify
emergencia
evacuation
de este
and
espacio.
emergency
Mantén
exit.
los accesos y
Please
rutas de
keep all
evacuación
the evacuation
despejados.
access areas
Si estás
cleared up.
acompañado
If
previamente,
you
coordina
have
un punto de
been
encuentro.
with another
Este es un
person,
recinto
agree on a
libre de
meeting point.
basura.
This
Te
is an area
agradecemos
free
lleves
of
contigo
trash,
los
so
desechos
please
que generes.
be able
Al
to take
dirigirse
the
a las
trash
rutas
to
de
the
evacuación,
corresponding areas.
mantén la calma.
And
Recuerda,
if there's a
no
need to
correr,
evacuate,
no
remember not to
empujar,
run, no
no
pushing,
gritar.
and non screaming.
Ayuda a ancianos,
Help the
niños y
elders,
mujeres
children,
embarazadas.
and pregnant women.
Aléjate de lugares que
Get
representen
away
algún
from those
riesgo para
areas
ti
that might be
o
risky
los
for you
tuyos.
or to your
Coopera con los encargados de
companions.
seguridad.
Comply with
Es de
security
suma
measurements.
importancia
It is very
estar
important
atento a las
to be
indicaciones de
attentive
los
to the
organizadores
indications
de
of the
este evento.
organizers of this event.
Su colaboración y
Your
conservar siempre la
collaboration
calma
and to
será
remain
muy
calm will
importante para
be
su
crucial
seguridad.
for your
La
safety.
Secretaría de Cultura y
The
el
Ministry
Bosque de
of Culture
Chapultepec
and the Chapultepec
agradece tu visita.
area thanks you for your visit.
Al permanecer en este espacio, autorizo a la Secretaría
While being
de
here,
Cultura
the
a
Culture
través del
Ministry
Complejo Cultural
authorized and
Los
also through
Pinos
Los
y Bosque de
Pinos in the
Chapultepec,
Chapultepec
para que
Bosque
utilicen imágenes,
is for you to
fotografías
use the
o
image of
videos
this area
que
in
serán
videos and
utilizados sin
photographs that
fines de
will be
lucro
used
para
with
difundir las
non-profit
actividades en redes
perspectives
sociales
to share
y
them in
medios de
social media
comunicación.
and communication media.
En caso de no
And
autorizarlo,
if
acercarse
this
a las
would not be
personas
authorized,
organizadoras
please get
para
close
dar
to the
aviso.
organizers to report them
Lo
that you were
anterior
not
con
able to
fundamento
take
en los
pictures.
acuerdos y
This is
lineamientos
based
de
on the guidelines
transparencia,
of
acceso a la
transparency
información
to have
pública
access to
y
public
protección de
information
datos
and protection
personales.
of personal data.
Agradecemos tu visita
We want to
y
thank you for
recuerda
your
seguir
visit
las
and
redes
remember to
de Los
follow
Pinos.
the network of Los Pinos.
Buenos días a todas y todos. Queremos darles
Good
la
morning,
cordial
all. We want
bienvenida
to
a
cordially
esta
welcome
sesión
you to
temática
this
sobre
session
políticas
on
culturales
what
renovadas y
it is renewed and
reforzadas en el
strengthened
marco
cultural
de
policies under
Mondiacult.
the framework of
Estamos felices
Mondiacult.
pero muy contentos
We
de
are
este
very
segundo día
pleased of
recargado de
having this
energía
second day
porque el día de
full
ayer fue muy
of
poderoso.
energy.
Pudimos
Yesterday was a
compartir
powerful
con
day. We
ministros,
were
con
able
ministras de
to be
cultura,
here with
miembros de
culture
la
ministers,
cooperación internacional
members
del
of
sector
international
privado y la sociedad
cooperation of the
civil,
private
y me
sector,
atrevería a
civil
decir que estamos
society, and I
cumpliendo
would
el
even say
objetivo
that
de
we
este
are
encuentro,
achieving the
que es
goal that we have with
articularnos
this
para generar
conference, and that is
acciones
to be
concretas
organized to have
con
specific
Mondiacult, que es el
actions
llamado al
through
cual
Mondiacult.
estamos. Muchas gracias a
Thank
quienes
you
han
so
hecho el
much for
esfuerzo de
those of you
acompañarnos
who made the
en
effort
esta
to join
mañana y
us
optar
this
por estar
morning
aquí en esta
and who
sesión,
decided
al
to be
igual que a
part of
todas las
this session,
personas
just
que
like
nos
all
están
those
viendo a
people
través
who
de las
are
redes
watching us
sociales,
through
distintas
social
plataformas
media
de
and
streaming para
different
seguir
streaming platforms
reflexionando
to
sobre esos
keep
retos,
on
sobre esos
thinking about those
desafíos, pero
challenges that we
particularmente
have,
sobre
but
esas
specifically
oportunidades
on
que
those
tenemos a
opportunities
partir
that
de
we
lo que
have
estamos viviendo
based
en
on what we are
Mondiacult, un
going through
espacio
in
seguro
Mondiacult,
para
a
los que estamos
safe
aquí porque
area
somos
for
como
those who are
camaradas,
here
como
because because we are accomplices. We are people truly committed with the cultural sector. So thank you very much for those of you who are joining us. I'm Aganati. I come from Panama, culture coordinator of the Educational and Cultural Coordination of Central America, led by the group of Central America Ministers of Culture in the Dominican Republic. And I will be the moderator of this session with the ministers that will take us through this trip. There are different regions that are represented here with different perspectives and with some common ideas that will help us to build up that roadmap and the agenda that we want to have in order to strengthen culture in future years, hoping that it's not going to be within the next 40 years to meet again, but for us to be able to meet soon to share the breakthroughs that we have attained based on these dialogue in Mondiacult. And I have just a brief introduction of what it is the meaning of this session of renew and strengthen cultural policies, which are crucial under the framework of Mondiacult. And this session will be dealing with the structural points related to adaptation and application of cultural policies before contemporary challenges. Under a context where the cultural sector has been deeply affected by the pandemic of COVID-19. Here we're going to be talking about political frameworks, measurements, and applications and tools to have a resilient sector, and specifically social economical situations of professionals of culture, artisans, and to also have diversification of funding sources. Definitely, this is an integrated framework that includes all the priorities that can help us to position culture as a common public good, which is the main objective why we are gathered here today in Mondiacult. And in order to begin with this session, to listen the ministers representing countries and regions, and specifically representing the people. That is why we are all here working hard, having dialogues and joining our efforts. I want to remind all the ministers that you will have 4 minutes for your presentations to share all that great information, expertise, and lessons learned with the audience that is here in presence and also with those that are watching us through streaming. When you listen to the music, that means that you are running out of time and that you need to stop because the other ministers also will have to share information. So please try to stick to the time you have been allocated. And for that, I would like to give the floor, first of all, to Excellence Minister of Culture, Mr. Tristan Bauer. Sir, you have the floor. Thank you. Before than anything else, Argentina is part of the shared commitment to work on the points stated in this World Conference, to defend our heritage and to fight against illegal trafficking of cultural goods, to work to leave behind the vulnerability of culture workers, and of course, to keep on working always to look for gender equality, to generate jointly measurement tools and indicators that will be useful to make decisions in the cultural sector, to implement mechanisms to decrease the digital divide and to be able to fully eliminate it. Having internet access is a human right. Protecting our planet. Nature is being threatened, and we cannot live with our hands and standing still before this horror. We acknowledge that culture is a world public good with intrinsic value that we consider that should be part of sustainable development agenda. We want to truly thank Mexico and UNESCO for organizing this World Conference conference, and we greet the present authorities and representatives of the participating countries. Building up these spaces is crucial because the problems that we currently face in our countries have a global matrix, and no one can solve those problems or challenges in an isolated fashion. We have these interdependency in the world, and therefore we require global responses to local problems. That is why we promote globalization of solidarity as an alternative for globalization of indifference and exclusion. In a world where the hate speeches increase, racist and xenophobic discourses based on individualism and suspecting the other, acknowledging the cultural diversity in the daily fight against all the colonialism forms is vital to find an exit altogether to this global crisis. All culture is a map that reminds us which are those common tasks that are worthwhile and that show us which could be the challenges that we need to deal with. There is no good life possible with those roadmaps that will link us with our ancestors and their fights, as well as with the future. The recovery and the rewriting of maps, because it's not only about one, but rather about hundreds of them, is a task that is underway and that we foster and that can give reality and a good base for democracy. We live in a planet where the land, water, air, and all human beings are threatened permanently. Pollution of the environment, climate change, and waste disposal were accelerated in recent years, but it hasn't happened before. Neoliberalism is a system that destroys the other, and everything that it is transformed into an obstacle to concentrate wealth. Before this culture of disposal, we propose to have a culture of life, to take care of the land and the environment, to guarantee a full life for new generations. After the pandemic that had the mankind in tender hooks, now we are in a stage of reconstruction. Economic inequalities and social inequalities have deepened, and the different states, just like they were leading sanitary campaigns, they have an important role to build up policies to have wealth distribution and to execute social justice. Under this scenario, we want to emphasize the role of cultural industries to produce added value and to create a true work. That is because of their contribution to reactivate economy and to generate meaning in order to strengthen democracies. To support the creation of content that will be representing the different cultures and the multiplicity of existing languages, to reaffirm sovereignty of peoples and to guarantee the execution of individual and collective rights. One language is lost, and with it we lose infinite worlds. Those maps get erased, and that they were guiding us in order to immerse us in the mere present, where consumption for those that are enabled and have access to it to make it worthwhile for everything. Once and for all, we need to consider the deployment of digitization in all the aspects of our lives. This unavoidable phenomenon amplifies the potential of cultural industries that are presenting new production patterns, distribution, and digital consumption, therefore transforming the entire value chain. Our current challenge is to understand and to be true leading characters of this process and not to be passive consumers that will be watching how through those same fibers communication and financial flows will be traveling. In a moment where it seems that violence is prevailing and disagreements, we are committed to work every day to have a dialogue and respect. Our road, it is fighting for peace in order to build up hopeful horizons in the middle of uncertainty and to be able to have a glimpse of a more just and solidarity world. Thank you very much.
Muchísimas gracias,
Thank you,
Ministro Tristán, por sus
Mr.
aportes,
Tristan,
esa
for your
perspectiva
contributions, for
desde
that
la bella
perspective
Argentina. Hicimos este
from
viaje a
Argentina.
Desde aquí de México, ahora vamos a tomar un avión
Now
para
we
irnos
will take
a
a plane from
Bélgica.
Argentina and to
Entonces,
go
por
to
eso
Belgium.
vamos a ver un
And
video
we
por
will be
parte de
watching
Su
the
Excelencia
video of
Benedict
Your
Linar,
Excellence
Ministra de
Benedict
la
Linar,
Juventud,
Minister
la
of
Salud,
Youth,
la
Health,
Cultura,
Culture,
Medias y Mujeres
Medias,
de la
and
Federación
Women's
de
Rights
Bruselas,
of the
Wallonia. Adelante
Wallonia
el video,
Brussels
muchas gracias.
Federation. Let's run the video, please.
Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, les ministres et délégués permanents, Mesdames et Messieurs, c'est avec grand plaisir que je porte
Ladies
aujourd'hui
and
le message
gentlemen,
de la
delegates,
Belgique en cette
it
deuxième
is a
édition
pleasure
de
for
la
me to
conférence Mondiacult.
give you the
La Belgique
message that we
remercie
have
le
from
gouvernement du
Belgium
Mexique
in
pour l'accueil de cette
Mondiacult. We
réunion
want to thank
historique
the
qui
Mexican
constitue l'étape
government
cruciale
for
pour la
hosting
reconnaissance
this
du rôle de la
historical
culture dans nos
conference,
sociétés.
which is a
Les
key in
réflexions
order
qui
to
s'amorcent
acknowledge
dans
the
cette
role of
enceinte
culture,
sont
and the
essentielles pour
reflections
dégager des
that
solutions
will be
communes et
presented
relever les défis
will be
mondiaux
essential
contemporains.
to be able to
La
find
culture
common
est un droit
solutions
fondamental
and
pour
together to
l'ensemble des
deal with
citoyennes
current
et des
challenges.
citoyens. Il
Culture
joue un
is
rôle
a right
essentiel
for
dans
all
l'épanouissement
citizens.
et
It
l'émancipation
plays a key
de
role
chacune et de chacun
for
d'entre
the
nous. Pour la
emancipation
Belgique,
of all
et
of
cela me
us.
tient particulièrement à cœur, l'accessibilité de la
This
culture
is a
au plus
very
grand
important
nombre
topic
dès
in
le plus
Belgium.
jeune âge
Having
est
access
une
to
priorité.
culture for
Nous devons en
most of
effet
the
relever
people and at an
collectivement
early
le
age, and that
défi
is a
de
priority.
l'accessibilité à la
Since
culture
together
qui
we
passe
need to
entre
deal
autres
with the
par son
challenge of
lien
having
avec
culture
l'éducation.
access,
Des
and
avancées
this is
majeures doivent
also
encore
related
être
to
réalisées afin
education,
de faire
and
dialoguer
important
la
breakthroughs
culture
need
et
to
l'école.
be carried
En
out in order
Belgique,
to
nous
promote
avons la
dialogue
volonté de
between
faire en
school
sorte que
and
chacun et
culture.
chacune
In
puisse
Belgium, we
participer à
want
la
to
vie
make
culturelle,
for
quelles que
each
soient leurs
to be able
origines,
to
leur
contribute to
genre
the cultural
ou leur
life
milieu social.
regardless of their
C'est
origins,
pourquoi nous
gender,
avons saisi
or
l'opportunité
social
d'une réforme de
origins.
l'enseignement
And that
pour
is
renforcer
why
les
we
collaborations
have
entre
had an
culture et
educational
école
reform
en
to
mettant en place un
have
parcours d'éducation
culture and
culturelle et
schools
artistique.
support and
Celui-ci
to have a
contribue à la
cultural
mise en
and
œuvre des
artistic
droits culturels
road,
de
which will
l'enfant
help
et
us
des
to
jeunes,
have
tels que
cultural
consacrés
rights
dans la
of
Convention internationale
children
des droits de
and
l'enfant.
youth, and also to
L'accès
have the
et la
agreement of
participation à la
international
diversité
rights
des
for
formes
children.
culturelles et
The
artistiques
access and
permet de former
participation
une
to
jeune
different
génération
artistic
de
forms
citoyennes et de
allow
citoyens
us to
critiques,
form new
actifs,
generations of citizens
créatifs
that will
et
be
émancipés.
critical, active, and
Ceux-ci seront ainsi
creative
mieux
and
armés face aux
emancipated.
défis majeurs tels que le
So
dérèglement climatique, mais aussi
they
les
will
enjeux
be better
démocratiques
equipped to
face à la
face these kind
tentation
of
des
challenges
extrêmes
like
et à une
climate change
société qui a
and also
tendance à se
democratic
polariser.
problems.
La Fédération Wallonie-Bruxelles et la Flandre
And
continueront
that
ainsi de soutenir l'UNESCO en
in
contribuant au
Flanders
Fonds
and
international
Brussels
pour la
will
diversité
keep on
culturelle
supporting
qui
to
favorise le
contribute
développement
to the
durable
International
par les
Fund
industries
for
culturelles et
Cultural
créatives.
Diversity and
Plus
to
de culture
promote
accessible à
sustainable
plus de personnes
development
dès le
of
plus jeune
culture,
âge,
more
c'est un
accessible
objectif
culture for
commun que
more
nous devons
people
poursuivre.
at the earliest
La
age
Belgique
possible
entend
should be
œuvrer
a
pour
common goal
renforcer
for
l'impact
us.
social et
Belgium
économique
wants to
du secteur
contribute
culturel.
to
Les industries
increase
créatives et
socio-economic
doivent ainsi être
impact
mieux
of
étudiées
culture.
afin que les
Creative and
politiques
cultural
publiques
activities
puissent les stimuler
need to be
et les
better
aider à
studied so that
atteindre
public
leur plein
policies
potentiel.
can be able to
L'intensification de la
support them
numérisation
to
de nos sociétés
obtain their
représente un
most
défi pour la diversité
perfect
culturelle en
results.
matière
We have these
d'accessibilité,
challenges
de
of
visibilité des œuvres
diversity and
culturelles et son
accessibility of
impact
culture
sur le
and to make
secteur
the cultural
créatif.
offering to be
Cette
visible in the
numérisation est
creative
aussi une
sector.
source d'innovation pour de nouveaux
Digitization
modèles
is also
sans
the source
frontières
of
qui
innovation
permettront au
to
contenu
create
de
new
circuler
models
davantage.
with no borders that will allow
nous
us to have a
développons
better
les
flow
outils
of content.
technologiques
In
permettant
Belgium,
aux
we
opérateurs
develop
culturels et
technological
médiatiques
tools
de mieux
that
valoriser leurs
allow
contenus sur
cultural
Internet.
and media
Cela
actors
s'opère
to
via
have
le
a better
développement de
value
la
of their products on
découvrabilité,
internet.
c'est-à-dire
and developing the capacity for users to discover and to locate them in the middle of many other contents. There are also initiatives to allow centralized access to works of art through one unique digital portal in such a way that they would be accessible at any time from anywhere. I am convinced that the culture is part of the solution to be able to get to society that will have exchange and to have mutual understanding in dialogues. And by joining these initiatives and the energy, UNESCO has a key role to play so that all countries together can contribute and would be able to make that culture to be considered as a world public good. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Minister of Belgium. Continuing with our session of renewed and strengthened cultural policies, we would like to give the floor to Peter Hopal, Secretary of State for Culture from Hungary. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you for the floor, distinguished colleagues, dear conference, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for this opportunity to exchange our views about cultural policies. I am grateful to the Mexican authorities for hosting this important UNESCO event. The past 2 years have made it painfully clear how suddenly life can throw us into unexpected situations and how important it is to react quickly, flexibly, and find solutions, and not least, to show solidarity and unity, and at both the national and the international level. We have just recovered from the serious effects of the pandemic. War has broken out in Europe, in Hungary's direct neighborhood, and we are all facing an economic and energy crisis. In light of all these serious unforeseen events, there is a considerable need for renewed and strengthened cultural policies. Speaking of the war, I wish to reaffirm Hungary's solidarity with the people of Ukraine. Hungary continues to stand for the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine and condemns Russia's military aggression. We are thankful to UNESCO and the European Union for the different initiatives and actions taken to address firstly the pandemic situation and now the dire situation in Ukraine. Let me briefly speak now about our objectives and achievements from the Hungarian side. During the emergency situation, it was demonstrated more than ever that culture not only has an entertaining role, but also contributes to the mental health of people and help them to overcome difficulties. At the same time, culture is a tool for promoting social mobility and inclusion. Reinforcing this social role of culture is in the focus of our ambition. We have launched specific programs to this end and achieved important results that we can build on in the future. Making culture accessible to all, including disadvantaged groups and Hungarian minorities living abroad, is another important element of our cultural policy. As digitalization of cultural contents has accelerated during the pandemic, fostering digital access and supporting innovation are very important areas for cooperation. What's more, we have made the biggest cultural infrastructure development in Hungary over the last 10 years. We have built museums and libraries and are proud of our international award-winning buildings. The Hungarian House of Music has won the World's Best Public Building Award. The Museum of Ethnography won in 2018 Europe's Best Public Building Award. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, I fully agree that an integrated approach could help reposition culture as a public good of universal access, and cultural rights constitute an integral part of fundamental human rights. Thank you very much for your attention.
Muchas gracias, ministro, por su
Thank you,
intervención.
Minister.
Y en estos momentos quiero comentar a
And
la audiencia
now
que voy a mirar a la cámara,
want
así que no se sientan
to
abandonados.
tell you that
sino
I'm
para
going to
compartir
be
también con quienes
staring
nos están
at
viendo
the screen
desde la
because
plataforma
I
streaming.
want to
Y
touch
queremos
base with
entonces
those
cederle
who
en
are
estos
joining
momentos
us
la
via
palabra
streaming.
al
And now
ministro
we have Minister Mohamed Mehdi Ben Said,
en representación
Minister
del
of
Ministerio de la
Youth,
Juventud, la
Culture
Cultura y
and
Comunicación de
Communication
Marruecos.
from
Muchas gracias y
Morocco.
adelante, ministro.
Thank you very much.
Merci. Avec cette question de temps, on se croirait au Parlement. Hein. Donc,
Thank you very
donc, chers
much
collègues,
for
je tiens tout
keeping
d'abord à remercier
time.
d'être présents aujourd'hui.
My dear
Avec nous, de
colleagues,
porter
I
autant
want to
d'intérêt à
thank
ce
you
sujet
today
si important et stratégique
for
du nécessaire
the
renouveau
interest
des politiques
of
culturelles
this
et de leur
strategic
renforcement.
topic with
Bien sûr, je
respect
tiens
to
également à remercier les
cultural
organisateurs et le gouvernement
policies.
mexicain,
I
nos
want to
hôtes,
thank
pour
organizers
l'organisation
and
de
the
cet événement
Mexican
dont nous avions
government,
besoin
our
afin
hosts,
de
for
pouvoir
organizing
profiter des
this
expériences
event
des autres
that is
et
so
confronter nos réalités qui nous
necessary
paraissent
in order to
différentes,
benefit
mais sans
from
réalité
each
si
other's
proches. Nous sortons, comme nous le savons tous
experiences
aujourd'hui, de 2
and that
années
are so
de pandémie que le
close in
secteur
terms of
culturel
our
a subi de plein
experiences,
fouet.
particularly
Ces 2 années ont
after
témoigné
the
de
pandemic,
l'immense
where
fragilité
the cultural
de ce
sector
secteur où dans
was
plusieurs
so
pays il a été
badly
classé à tort
affected
comme
and
non essentiel. Je
confronted
dis à
with
tort,
its
non pas
own
par chauvinisme ni
fragility.
par culturisme, mais parce que nous avons vu partout
And
les
it is
conséquences
important
que
to
cela a eu
say
sur les uns
that
et
we
les
all
autres.
suffered the
Toutefois,
consequences
cette pandémie
of
nous a permis
the
une chose,
pandemic.
comprendre
This
toute la
pandemic,
nécessité
however,
d'un
allowed
renouveau des
us
politiques culturelles
to
permanentes.
understand the
Au
needs
Royaume du Maroc, le choix a
to
été fait de mettre ensemble
rethink the
les
cultural
départements de la
policies.
culture et de la jeunesse.
In
Et dès le début de mon
Morocco,
mandat,
we
il y a
decided
à peu
to
près d'un an,
set
j'ai tout de
the
suite compris
Minister
que les
of
deux étaient
the Ministry of Youth,
indissociables, voire
Culture and
complémentaires.
Communication
Tout de
because
suite, la
they
question
go
que nous nous
together,
sommes
they
posée au sein du
complement
département
each other.
est,
So the
allons-nous
question
mener une politique
that we
culturelle
ask
où le citoyen
ourselves
sera public,
has to
ou une
do
politique
with the
culturelle qui fera du
establishment
citoyen
of a
l'acteur
cultural
principal du secteur
policy
culturel.
where
Dans notre pays,
universities
trop
will
longtemps, la
play
culture
a
a été
key
vue comme un
role
bien
for
de
its
rente. Elle a
activities
été
because culture
sortie
has
du
been
circuit
considered
économique et
as something
considérée comme un
profitable,
passif sur
as
lequel certains
something
gouvernements
that is
exerçaient une tutelle et
only
trop
as
souvent un jugement.
a
Pour renouveler
liability
cette stratégie, notre
guarded by
gouvernement a d'abord
government and
instauré
that
une logique
government
d'investissement dans la
ruled.
culture
Therefore,
et s'est
this
retiré le droit
renovation
de juger.
implied investment
Nous
on
sommes passés d'un
culture
rôle d'arbitre à un rôle
and set aside
d'accompagnateur. À ce
this
titre, nous avons
role
décidé
of
de
judging.
démocratiser l'accès à la
Now
culture
we
en rendant le
accompany,
produit
we look
culturel
for the
accessible.
democratization
Nous
of
avons
culture
renforcé l'offre qui
and
s'adressait
look
à une
for
demande existante et
available
pressante.
cultural
Ainsi, il est nécessaire pour
products and
renforcer le
of
secteur
course
culturel et son apport à l'échelle des
offer,
pays
and
comme à
we
l'échelle mondiale de mettre en place une
are
politique
focusing
harmonieuse,
on the
une politique
strengthening of
d'héritage
this
culturel,
sector
mais
and
également
to
d'invention,
set
à cheval
the
entre
idea
l'apprentissage et l'émotion,
of this
l'universalité de l'art et
cultural
sa diversité. Pour nous, la démarche n'est ni de
cultural
regretter, ni de dénoncer ce qui a été fait,
inheritance,
mais de déceler
and
chaque jour
we
la force de
want
nouveauté
to
dans l'existant, tout en
rethink, to
encourageant
see a renewal
l'invention
with
et ainsi
respect
systématiser une véritable
to
économie
the
de la culture
reinvention,
et
to
la
the
généraliser. Cette
systematization of
démarche
a
n'est pas uniquement
culture,
nationale,
of
elle
culture.
s'inscrit dans une logique ancrée dans les territoires. Le projet
All
culturel,
of
quel qu'il
this
soit,
is not
modifie
only
le
in the
regard que les
digital
individus
arena,
portent
but
sur leur
across
quartier,
the
leur ville ou
different
leur région,
territories,
et en encourageant le
based
foisonnement
on
et en fondant
what
notre
people think of their
politique culturelle
region, their
sur
neighbor,
l'ancrage territorial
their
des projets
neighboring,
qu'elle porte. Il
their
s'agit de créer
neighbors
un
and
écosystème
the
pérenne
territory,
et
and
engendrer un
in
cercle
order to
vertueux en faisant
have
en
the
sorte que l'influence
creation
alimente l'activité
of
du tissu
an
économique local.
evergreen process
Aussi, la politique
and
culturelle que
a
nous menons est
virtuous
axée sur 3
cycle.
objectifs
Also,
centraux.
our cultural
Mettre en
policy
valeur
has
les
remained
spécificités culturelles
access
marocaines et leur
to
diversité,
cherish
favoriser
the
la création
cultural
culturelle en mobilisant et en
specificities
encourageant toutes
of
les ressources
Morocco,
disponibles,
also cultural
renforcer le capital
mobility,
humain
putting
dans le domaine de
all
la culture,
resources at
encourageant
hand,
la formation,
reinforcing as
la
well
formation continue et la
human
rentabilité
resources
culturelle.
in order to
Excellences,
strengthen
mesdames et messieurs,
education and
notre
profitability in
politique
culture.
culturelle, celle que nous
Your
mettons en
Excellencies,
place et
ladies
menons avec
and
beaucoup de
gentlemen,
conviction,
our
se veut
cultural
d'abord et avant tout
policy,
une
the one
politique
we are
centrée sur le vivre
implementing,
ensemble, l'ouverture
is
sur le monde et la
looking
capacité de
to
créer.
be
Le
a
royaume, grâce
policy
à une
with
vision portée
respect
par
to
Sa Majesté le
sharing,
Roi,
with respect
est une
to
terre
our
d'échange et de dialogue.
possibility
Il
to
continuera
create
inlassablement à écrire
with His
l'histoire qui est la
Majesty,
sienne
the
pour mieux éclairer l'avenir. Sa diversité culturelle
looking
et
for our
civilisationnelle
own
a su l'ancrer dans la
history, for our
reconnaissance
own
de l'égale
cultural
dignité des cultures.
heritage,
C'est
in
donc à travers ces
order
valeurs que le Maroc,
to
terre de paix,
acknowledge
de
the
dialogue et de
dignity
culture, que je
across
souhaite adresser à
cultures.
l'ensemble de mes collègues.
The Kingdom
Mes plus
of
sincères remerciements en
Morocco
souhaitant à chacun
embraces
pleine
this
réussite
and
et plein
wishes
succès dans cette mission
to
difficile que nous menons
wish
tous
you
ensemble. Merci.
the greatest success in this activity, in this endeavor. Thank you very much, Mr. Mohamed, for everything that you are achieving in Morocco. Now we have Minister Bexy Betsabet Chavez Chino, who is representing the Ministry of Culture in Peru. Thank you very much. Well, first of all,
hola a todos.
good morning.
Para mí es un gusto conocerlos.
I am very happy
Reciban
to
el
greet you
saludo
all.
fraterno del presidente Pedro Castillo del
And
Perú.
President Pedro
Reciban
Castillo
también
from
ministras,
Peru
ministros de Estado
greets you,
y altas
as
autoridades
well
de la
as the
cultura.
authorities and
El
ministers of
agradecimiento
culture.
y el
And
de
we
nuestro
wish to
país
thank and
a nuestros
acknowledge
anfitriones,
our host
a México y la
nation,
UNESCO,
Mexico
por esta
and
importante
UNESCO. Thank you
oportunidad
very much for
para
giving
poder
us this
reflexionar
opportunity to
sobre el futuro del
reflect
sector
upon the
cultural,
future of the
donde, por
cultural
supuesto, pensamos
sector.
y nos preocupamos
Of
por la
course, we think
preservación,
we are
el
concerned about the
desarrollo
preservation,
sostenible,
sustainable
pero sobre
development,
todo el tema
and
inclusivo,
above all,
y por eso
inclusion.
realicé este
That
saludo.
is why I greeted
Y
you
la reactivación
in
económica
such a
de un
way.
sector que ha
Economic
sido muy golpeado por
reactivation
la
of this
pandemia
sector
del
that was
COVID-19
so
que
badly
actualmente
affected
además
by
estamos por una
COVID-19
crisis
pandemic,
mundial en
and
materia
now
de
we are
alimentación.
facing a food crisis
Si bien es cierto, el
worldwide.
Perú estaba muy orgulloso de su
Peru
diversidad
was
cultural.
proud of its
Es bastante
cultural
conocido que
diversity,
tenemos
and
nosotros
we
24 regiones,
have
tenemos
24
55
regions, we
pueblos
have 55
originarios, 54,
indigenous peoples,
51 de ellos son amazónicos y
51
4
are
son
from
andinos.
the Amazonia
Tenemos
region,
una
and
diversidad
the
de
rest from
lenguas
the Andean.
también,
And of course, we have a
47,
diversity of
44
languages,
son
47,
selváticas
47
y las
from
otras son
the
andinas.
rainforest and the rest
Para
from the
nosotros es
Andean
muy importante
region.
la diversidad
So for
cultural
us,
que tenemos en el
diversity
país.
is
Es
important,
bastante
has been
conocido
important. It is
Machu
Machu Picchu, of
Puebla.
course, is well known, Cuelap as
Sin
well.
embargo,
However,
es importante también tener
it
una
is also
mirada
important to
intercultural
have an
que nos permita
intercultural
atender las
look
necesidades de este sector,
at the needs
tanto en
of the
patrimonio,
sector in
industrias
terms
culturales,
of
artes,
heritage, in terms of
y
arts
atender a
and
los pueblos
culture,
indígenas u
and of
originarios y al
course,
pueblo afroperuano.
service the
Y sin duda,
Afro-Peruvian
reitero, el
people,
Perú tiene
our
una gran diversidad cultural.
native
En el año
Peruvian
2020,
peoples. In
hace 2 años
2020, that is
solamente,
2 years
en el
ago,
país mío se aprobó la
in my
primera política
country, the
nacional de
first
cultura
national
con miras al
cultural
año
policy
2030,
was approved vis-à-vis
implementando diversas
2030 with a
medidas que han sido
number of
reconocidas
measures that have
en
been
el Informe Mundial de la
acknowledged
UNESCO sobre
in the
protección y
World
promoción de la
UNESCO
diversidad
report
de las
on the
expresiones
promotion
culturales.
and fostering of cultural
Tenemos también aprobada la
expressions.
política nacional del
Likewise, the
pueblo
national
afroperuano
policy of
al
the
año 2030
Afro-Peruvian
que beneficiará a más
people
de
to
800.000
benefit more than
ciudadanos que son
800,000
parte del segundo grupo
citizens that
étnico
are
más
part
importante de nuestro
of
país.
the second most important ethnic
Contamos en
group in
nuestro país
Peru.
actualmente con 39
Today we have
gestores
39
interculturales.
intercultural
Esto nos ha servido
managers.
mucho,
That
les
is very
comento,
important
justamente por la diversidad
because of
cultural que
the
tenemos
cultural
cuando estábamos en pleno
diversity that
proceso
we
de
have.
vacunación,
When we were in the
eran los
vaccination
gestores
process,
interculturales
the
que hablaban la
intercultural
lengua
managers
originaria
that
y se
speak
acercaban y
the
lograban la
native
vacunación,
languages
pero
were
no solamente
able
a
to
través del
achieve
sector de
vaccination,
cultura
not only
apoyaron al
through
sector de
culture,
salud,
but they
sino a
supported the
diferentes
health
sectores.
sector and
Entonces, una
other
experiencia muy
sectors.
importante que
Therefore,
nosotros
it
queremos
was a very
compartir.
enriching experience to be shared with all of
Asimismo, les
you.
comento que los recursos de la
Likewise,
cultura son unos
cultural
bienes comunes
resources
globales
are
y así lo
common
hemos
global
entendido.
goods, and we have
Por eso
understood it
destacamos
this
la
way.
acción
That's why we
multidisciplinaria con
underscore
instituciones nacionales e
multifunctional
internacionales, entre ellos la
activities,
UNESCO,
both
cuyo apoyo para nosotros
domestic
ha
and
sido
international,
fundamental.
with the
Ahora mismo,
support
para la
of
recuperación de la
UNESCO.
fortaleza del CUELAP,
Now,
que por
to
motivos estrictamente
regain the strength of
medioambientales tiene una
COELAP that
afectación.
has
Quiero
environmental
mencionarles
affectation.
además
I
que
also
es
want to
importante
share with you
visibilizar
that
el
it's
trabajo de los
important to
portadores de
make it
nuestro
visible
patrimonio
the
inmaterial
work of
a
those
través de
who
ruras
bear
maki, término en
our
quechua que quiere decir
intangible
hecho con tus
heritage,
manos.
of whatever is done with our
La que con
hands, as our
ferias y de manera
Quechua people
virtual venimos retribuyendo a nuestros
express.
artesanos nacionales
Therefore,
de todo el
we
país
work with our
un espacio, un mercado para que
craftsmen, with our
puedan asimismo
craftswomen,
poder
with a
distribuir.
market
Creo que
in
sería
order
importante hacer esto de
to
manera internacional, de manera
distribute
mundial,
their
donde
goods,
podamos
not
compartir a
only
través de la
national, but
artesanía nuestro patrimonio
internationally,
inmaterial.
in order to share our heritage.
Otro tema que
Another
también es
topic that
importante es
is
que la
very
cultura
important is
debe de
that
ser una
culture
cultura
needs to
inclusiva.
be inclusive.
En el Perú estamos avanzando
In
con
Peru, we
señalística que nos
have
permita poder tener
making
a todas las
progress
personas
with
siendo parte del
signaling,
espectro cultural. No
having
nos alejemos de
everybody
ello, para nosotros
involved, and
es un
so
tema
that is
fundamental.
something that is of relevance
Y
for
finalmente
all of us. And
quisiera
last but not
terminar
least,
con esta frase para que
I have a
la puedan
phrase
entender
for you
absolutamente todos los que nos
so that all of
ven,
you can
¿no?
understand
Que,
what
en
we
efecto,
are looking
hagamos
for.
que la cultura sea
Culture
inclusiva,
should be inclusive.
diseñemos este lenguaje
Let's
de señas que es nuestro
design
lenguaje mundial
this
para
signaling
tener acceso
language in order to
absolutamente
have
todos.
access
Muchas gracias.
to everybody. and to give access
Muchas
to
gracias,
everybody.
ministra.
Thank you, Madam
Quiero, antes de ceder la
Minister.
palabra
And
a
before
nuestros
giving the floor to
siguientes
the next
representantes,
speaker,
contarles algo que estoy
to
viendo en
share
la sala.
something with
Me
you that I'm
encanta
seeing.
verlos tomar
I
notas.
love
Eso significa que
seeing
están
you
prestando
taking
atención.
notes, because
Y
that
eso me
means
gusta
that you are
mucho. Y
paying
los que están
attention.
viendo el
That's
celular, yo
wonderful.
supongo que tienen
And
abierto
those
el
who
bloc de
are
notas. Así que
paying attention
aquí
to the
contento de
mobile,
poder tener
hopefully
esta
you are also
recepción
taking notes.
positiva
So
por parte de
it's
la
very
audiencia.
interesting to
Vamos a
see all of you
continuar
so
con
much
nuestra
involved.
sesión
Now,
cediéndole la palabra
we
a don
have
Souleymane Jula
Mr.
Diop,
Suleiman
quien
Jula
es
Diop,
embajador permanente
Ambassador
de
and
Senegal.
Permanent to UNESCO.
Mesdames, Messieurs les ministres, Excellences, Mesdames, Messieurs les ambassadeurs,
Ladies and
distingués
gentlemen,
délégués,
ministers, Your Excellencies,
je
ambassadors,
voudrais à l'entame de mon propos
delegates.
Vous transmettre les félicitations de
First,
Monsieur le Président
I
Macky
want
Sall,
to
Président de la
convey
République du Sénégal,
congratulations
adressé
from
à la directrice
our
générale de
President
l'UNESCO, au
from
sous-directeur
Senegal,
général pour la culture, à l'ensemble
to the Director
du
General of
secrétariat pour
UNESCO,
tous les efforts qui ont été faits et ayant conduit
to the
à cette grande
Secretariat, of
conférence
course,
mondiale.
to all
Mes
those
chaleureux
that have put
remerciements
so
vont
much
également au
effort
gouvernement
into
du
this
Mexique,
World
pays
Conference.
hôte, à la
Likewise,
ville de
I want
Mexico
to
pour l'accueil très
thank the
chaleureux,
government
mais
of
aussi
Mexico
pour
and
tous les
Mexico
efforts en
City
vue d'une
as
bonne
well
organisation de cette
for
grande conférence
having
mondiale sur la
us
culture
and for their
qui doit
efforts
aboutir à
in
la
order
déclaration
to
des
have
ministres
such
indiquant les
a
grandes lignes
wonderful
des politiques
organization
culturelles
of
à mettre en œuvre
Mondiacult
pour
and
un développement
hopefully
durable.
to have a ministerial statement by
Excellences,
all of
Mesdames et
us.
Messieurs, 40 ans après la conférence mondiale de l'UNESCO sur les
Now,
politiques
talking about
culturelles
cultural
Mondiacult,
practices, 40 years
nous nous
after
retrouvons
the
aujourd'hui au
first
Mexique, dans la
Mondiacult
ville de Mexico, pour une
conference in
conférence mondiale. Cette rencontre
1982,
ministérielle de
once
haut
again we
niveau,
are
je le
meeting
pense,
in
sera
Mexico
l'occasion
City. We are
d'évaluer
meeting
les différents progrès
in this
accomplis pendant ces 4
top
décennies,
level
mais aussi
ministerial
donner une
meeting in
impulsion
order to
nouvelle
talk
quant à
about what
notre
has
vision de
happened in
l'avenir
these
des
past
politiques
40 years
culturelles.
and also to give an
Depuis
additional
la dernière conférence
driving force to the
sur le
political,
développement
cultural,
des politiques
so
culturelles
to
et
our
le développement
cultural
durable de
policies.
1982, l'UNESCO, grâce à son leadership mondial dans ce domaine
After
en
the
tant que
conference of
laboratoire d'idées, mais
1982,
aussi dans sa fonction normative, a permis de faire évoluer les
we
politiques
have
culturelles
seen
malgré les nombreux
all
obstacles
these
dressés
ideas
sur son chemin.
stemming, all the
Aussi,
regulations,
convient-il
all the
de rappeler que
development
les
of
déclarations
cultural
adoptées lors des
policies, in
conférences sur les
spite of all
politiques culturelles tenues à Mexico en
pitfalls. Therefore,
82, à Stockholm en
declarations of
98 ont permis de
1982
définir
and
aujourd'hui
then in
la culture
Stockholm
comme
in
l'ensemble des traits distinctifs
1998
spirituels,
allowed for
matériels,
the definition
intellectuels et
of
affectifs
culture
qui
as a
caractérisent
set
une
of
société ou un
cultural
groupe social et
traits,
qui englobe, outre les
and
arts
some
et
of them
lettres,
that
les
are
modes de vie, les systèmes de
characteristic
valeurs, les traditions et les
of
croyances.
societies, including
Excellences,
arts,
Mesdames et
but
Messieurs,
also
aujourd'hui plus que
the way
jamais,
we
cette
live,
conférence
our
suscite
beliefs,
beaucoup
and
d'espoir
other
car les
things.
ministres
So
de la
today,
culture
more
se
than
réunissent
ever, this
dans un
conference
contexte
gives
mondial très
rise to
particulier.
great hope
Dès lors,
because
il urge de répondre aux nombreux
worldwide,
défis, ça a été dit ici,
we are
déjà
experiencing
exacerbés
very
par la
particular
crise sanitaire
circumstances.
de
Therefore, we have to
Covid-19, les
cope
crises
with
politiques et
all the
sécuritaires,
challenges we
les
are
conflits qui
facing
affectent de
as a result
nombreuses régions
of the
du monde,
pandemic,
particulièrement mon
conflicts and
continent,
security
l'Afrique.
issues that many countries
De
are
plus,
facing, and
ce
particularly
constat donc
my
nous invite à
continent, that is
faire le
Africa.
plaidoyer d'une plus grande solidarité des nations,
This
d'un
situation
multilatéralisme
calls us to
renforcé,
be
plus
more
ouvert, plus inclusif,
working
qui
in favor
reconnaît
of
la culture
solidarity
comme
in
un
order to
patrimoine
reinforce
fondateur de notre
multilateralism,
humanité,
in
vecteur
which
et moteur
culture is
d'un développement
acknowledged
durable.
as the
De plus,
basis of
les
humanity
interventions des
and
différents
driving
orateurs
force
ici
of sustainable
qui sont succédés
development,
nous
as well
imposent de
as
saisir
the
la
different
pleine mesure des
presentations from
enjeux,
my colleagues
notamment pour la région
invite
africaine.
us to understand
Je parle
better
aussi
what
en
is
tant que
at
président
stake,
du
in
groupe des ambassadeurs
particular
africains à l'UNESCO.
for the African
En effet, les
regional. And I
consultations dans
speak
notre
as a
région, sous
representative
présidence sénégalaise,
or member
ont
of the
permis de mesurer
representatives of
davantage
Africa.
le rôle leader de notre organisation et de mettre en
Regional
exergue les
consultation
priorités
allowed
d'un
us to understand
secteur
the
qui
leading
connaît un développement
role
fulgurant,
of our
mais
organization
présentant
and to
beaucoup de
understand the
difficultés
different
quant
roles
à
of
sa
the
production,
development
sa
that we are
diffusion, sa
experiencing,
distribution.
and also
Les échanges
production,
lors des
dissemination, and
consultations ont été
distribution
marqués
of
par la
culture.
prise en compte de nouveaux paradigmes,
Exchanges
et
of
c'est
these
important,
consultations
l'équité culturelle.
gave rise
Ainsi,
to
en
a new
érigeant le secteur de
paradigm,
la
that
culture
is
comme un impératif
cultural
éthique,
equality,
l'UNESCO contribue à
and
garantir un meilleur
the
équilibre
cultural sector
géographique et une
is
meilleure
a moral
représentativité
obligation
du
in
patrimoine
order
dans
to
toutes les
achieve
régions du
better
monde.
balance and
Ce
better
plaidoyer
representation from the
résonne dans
heritage
une Afrique
standpoint
très peu
across all regions
représentée dans le
worldwide.
patrimoine mondial,
And
mais
that
bien trop
resounds in
représentée
Africa with not so
dans le
much
patrimoine en
representation
péril.
in the worldwide
Cette
heritage.
convergence de
However,
vues des différents pays
represented,
africains
of
trouve
course,
également un écho favorable dans la question de la restitution des biens
as
culturels.
endangered
À ce
heritage.
propos,
We also have to talk about the restitution of cultural goods. I wish to remind you the fight of former Director General of UNESCO in favor of these measures. In Senegal, artists are one of our concerns, and we try to implement a law to protect artists and art and culture professionals and to reinforce our cultural policy and giving the possibility to all artists to develop their full potential from a cultural standpoint. UNESCO is an institution that defends peace through the cooperation as broad as possible. Fraternity across nations needs to be a beacon in these difficult times and challenging times we are experiencing. Hopefully, the works we are doing in Mexico will yield fruit. Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much. And we are in this very diverse trip here across the panel, across the attendees. Now, we have a message from Sri Lanka, from His Excellency Vidura Mikarayaka, Minister of Buddhasasana, Religious and Cultural Affairs. We have the video for you.
With warm greetings to Chairperson, Excellencies, and delegates, Sri Lanka wishes to convey its appreciation to the Government of Mexico for its excellent arrangements to hold the Mondiacult 2022 meeting to continue with the good works that UNESCO began 40 years ago. Sri Lanka, with its unique location in the middle of the ancient maritime silk and cinnamon routes, linking Asia with Arabian, African, and Western worlds, inherited an essentially rich cosmopolitan culture through assimilation and inculcation. It is undeniably this cosmopolitan nature of Sri Lanka's cultural heritage, both in its intangible and tangible forms, that has inspired and stimulated the island's contemporary cultural and creative industries, which are so diverse and dynamic. The government has recognized the potential of the country's cultural heritage and the contemporary cultural and creative industries in achieving the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, and the influence of digital technologies on all aspects of human life in order to elevate human fraternity. We have realized the need for a much broader policy framework, not only to protect or safeguard cultural heritage and promote the diversity of cultural and creative industries, but also to utilize them for sustainable development, accommodating digital technologies to their fullest potential, while preserving the human component. The government has already begun revisiting the existing laws and regulations pertaining to cultural institutions, identifying the priorities that need revision, and developing a new policy framework fully accommodating digital technologies, without forgetting our roots while maintaining our identities, to meet the goals of the Mondiacult 2022 conference. Thank you very much.
Muchísimas gracias al ministro de
Thank
Sri
you,
Lanka
Minister
por este
from Sri Lanka,
hermoso
for
mensaje y
this
poderoso.
beautiful and
Vamos a
empowering
continuar
message.
cediéndole la
Now,
palabra a la
we
ministra
have
Ann Wicker,
Ann Wicker,
de la
rather,
Secretaría de
Director
Asuntos
of the
Internacionales
International
del Ministerio de
Secretariat
Cultura de
of the
Suecia.
Ministry
Adelante,
of
directora.
Culture from Sweden.
Thank you very much. Excellencies, it's my honor to address you today. 24 years ago, we met in Stockholm, Sweden, at the second UNESCO Conference on Cultural Policies. Since then, the world has changed drastically. However, UNESCO's core mandate to build peace through international cooperation is as valid as ever. As we gather here for Mondiacult, talking about building peace and development through culture, Russia's unprovoked and illegal military aggression against Ukraine is continuing. Sweden condemns this in the strongest possible terms. It's an ongoing blatant violation of international law and the UN Charter, as well as UNESCO conventions. Culture is a powerful tool to identify needs and challenges. It can give us strength and agency to keep working toward a peaceful world. International cooperation within culture can lead to greater mutual respect and understanding. Culture is key in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals set out in the 2030 Agenda. All this, however, requires arts to be free. The right to freely participate in the cultural life and to enjoy the arts is manifested in the Universal Declaration on Human Rights. Our common goal is to create resilient societies that are capable of withstanding and recovering from all kinds of crises and challenges. Societies where human rights are promoted and protected for all, leaving no one behind. Societies that make use of the potential of culture and artistic expression in democratic development. Efforts must be designed based on gender equality, including youth, LGBTQI+ persons, and indigenous people. The principle of arm's length distance is crucial. This means that authority instructions and support schemes must be designed accordingly. Governments should not make decisions about artistic content or decide which scientific perspectives cultural heritage institutions should use. As shown in the UNESCO Global Report, Reshaping Policies for Creativity, launched earlier this year, attacks on freedom of artistic expression continue to rise. We need to make full use of the conventions and recommendations that exist within UNESCO. They are fundamental for securing artist conditions and artistic freedom globally. To create renewed and strengthened cultural policies, we should take informed decisions built on data. The unique Reshaping report is therefore very important. Through gathered data, it points out emerging trends in cultural policies at a global level and suggests recommendations to foster creative ecosystems. Dialogue and cooperation with civil society, human rights defenders, artists, and culture workers are vital to build sustainable governance for culture. Multi-stakeholder dialogue with broad participation must therefore be part of our cultural policies. 13 years ago, the Swedish Parliament adopted national cultural policy objectives. These state that culture is to be a dynamic, challenging, and independent force based on the freedom of expression. Everyone is to have the opportunity to participate in cultural life. Creativity, diversity, and artistic quality are to be integral parts of society's development. This still stands. I'm also very proud that Sweden, within the framework of the International Federation of Arts Councils and Culture Agencies, will host the 9th World Summit on Arts and Culture in May next year. This summit will further explore the artistic freedom as a fundamental pillar of culture policy. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, ministra, por su intervención.
Thank you, Madam Minister.
Y quiero pedir otro aplauso más
And
para
I
los
wish
ministros y ministras
us
que
to bring our
han
hands together to all
participado en este
ministers who
excelente
have
panel. Un
taken
aplauso,
part
por
in this
favor.
panel. Thank you very much to all of you.
Donde nos han podido compartir experiencias,
We've heard your
lecciones
experiences,
aprendidas,
lessons
pero también
learned,
aportes
and
que van a
also
contribuir a esa hoja de
contributions
ruta
that
o
will
esa
contribute to
agenda que
this
estamos
roadmap or
construyendo
this
en el
agenda
marco
that
de
we are
Mondiacult para
preparing in the
acelerar
framework
esas acciones
of
que
Mondiacult
debemos
in
hacer a
order to
nivel global, a
strengthen
nivel
actions
regional,
worldwide,
a nivel
regionally,
nacional, y no
nationally,
olvidemos
and
el
of
nivel local,
course
que es
locally,
muy
because
importante
local
en
efforts
este
are very,
proceso
very
o en esta
important
lucha que estamos
in this
llevando.
process.
Gracias a los ministros por
Thank
todos sus
you,
aportes relacionados a la necesidad
to all ministers for their ideas, their notions to strengthen digitalization, to enhance connection of culture and mental health that we saw so evidently when the pandemic struck, and the need to have differentiated points of view in order to strengthen inclusive ecosystems. We are no uniform society. We are heterogeneous, and therefore renewed cultural policies need to be integral, but also need to be embraced, considering diversity across our nations. There was also underscoring of the strengthening of institutions if we want renewed cultural policies to deal with the new needs that we are facing as global societies. We need to strengthen the capacities of our institutions. So thank you very much to all the participants of this panel. Thank you to all the ministers for sharing with us such relevant notions. And we have not yet finished this ministerial session. We now have a second part where we will hear some contributions and comments and feedback from some of the observers that have been joining us during the session during Mondiacult. And for that, I want to invite our colleague, Miles Young, Director of Human Rights and Social Development of the Pacific Community. Thank you very much, Miles, and welcome.
Thank you very much, Moderator. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. To start, may I, on behalf of the Pacific community, pay respects to all indigenous and cultural representatives here today. I acknowledge the indigenous peoples of the land on which we gather, the government of Mexico as a warm and generous host for this conference, as well as UNESCO and the European Union and others who have played a key role in organizing this milestone event. In April this year, ministers for culture from 18 Pacific Island countries and territories endorsed the Pacific Regional Culture Strategy 2020-2032 to guide and facilitate a regional approach to culture, including through informing national culture strategies. The strategy is aligned with the 2050 strategy for the Blue Pacific continent, which sets out the broader overarching Pacific development aspirations. The alignment of the two strategies ensures mutually reinforcing and supportive policy frameworks when it comes to culture for development. A truly collaborative, inclusive, and consultative initiative, the Regional Culture Strategy is proudly Pacific-led, Pacific-owned, and reflects the priorities and aspirations of the region. The 5 priority areas are cultural policy frameworks, cultural heritage, cultural well-being, cultural innovation, and cultural statistics, with 3 cross-cutting priorities being research, youth, and capacity development. The strategy focuses on strengthening the protection and safeguarding of traditional knowledge, strengthening cultural and creative industries, and harnessing the invaluable contribution of culture to sustainable development with application to social inclusion, cohesion and stability, to economic development, to human rights and gender equality, to environmental sustainability, and building resilient communities. The strategy also helps us to address the most pressing issue of our region, climate change. It will help reinforce the value and contribution of traditional knowledge to climate change adaptation and mitigation, and strengthen efforts to address climate change impacts on culture, cultural heritage, natural heritage, and the potential loss of intangible cultural heritage and languages associated with displacement and climate migration. In closing, may I say that the Pacific community will explore opportunities to work with agencies and development partners across the world and the region, of course, working in the culture for development space. And the Mondiacult Conference 2020 too has been invaluable for learning and connections to further our work. Thank you, Navalevu, Meitaki, Malopito, Tena Koutou, muchas gracias.
Gracias, Mail, por tus observaciones. Vamos a continuar
Thank
con
you
el
for your
último
comments,
observador
and we
de esta
will have the
sesión
last
sobre
observer
políticas
of this
culturales
session
renovadas. Para
about
ello
Renew
llamamos
and Strengthen
a Davide
Cultural Center,
Grosso,
Davide
quien es el
Grosso,
presidente de la
who is the
NGO
president of the NGO
Liaison
UNESCO Liaison Comité.
It's fine. I think it's fine. Excellencies, as chair of the International Conference of NGOs in official partnership with UNESCO, representing 411 NGOs in official partnership with UNESCO, I'm glad and I would like to express my sincere congratulations to having organized such important meeting to discuss cultural policies, how to renew and strengthen them. I'm also glad that for this occasion of Mondiacult, all NGOs in official partnership have been invited, all of them, not only those directly related to culture. And this is a very much welcomed gesture of openness by UNESCO, which I greet with enthusiasm because it shows the importance of civil society and the importance of the role of collective cooperation for a better future. The world, our world, needs better and more sustainable cultural policies. And the community of NGOs is here to show what they can do. Only by having a look at a few side events, like the Culture 2030 goal or the Climate Heritage Network, we can all understand the power of civil society. Indeed, we need an integrated approach, encompassing all priorities and involving all stakeholders. Civil society, and especially NGOs in official partnership with UNESCO, stand ready to support the organization in this grand and very much needed endeavor. Gracias.
Muchas gracias, Davide, por tu intervención y tus
Thank you, Davide,
observaciones,
for
y
your
con esto
remarks.
damos por concluida
And in this way,
esta
we
sesión
conclude
sobre
this
políticas
session
culturales y
on
renovadas. Creo
renewed
que ha
and
sido
strengthened
bastante
cultural
amena,
policies,
ha sido bastante
which has been
enriquecedora,
very
y nos llevamos
enriching,
muchísimos
and we
conocimientos,
take
aportes
away
y lecciones
many
aprendidas.
contributions and
Vamos a
lessons
continuar
learned.
con el programa
We will
de hoy
continue
para
with
Mondiacult
today's
y
agenda
recordarles,
in
hacerle un
Mondiacult, and
llamado
just
a que
we're making
debemos,
a
cuando
call
regresemos a nuestros
that
países,
when we
irnos a la acción.
go back to
No
our
nos podemos
countries,
quedar
we
en la
can go back
reflexión.
to action. We
Necesitamos
cannot only
accionar,
be
porque lo que
reflecting, we
estamos
need to act,
haciendo es para
because what we're
precisamente
doing
cumplir
is
esa Agenda
precisely
2030
to
que si
comply
bien es
with the
cierto, sabemos que lo
2030
contamos con
agenda,
nuestro objetivo de
even though we know
desarrollo
that we
sostenible,
don't
pero no nos
have
quita
our
de seguir redoblando
SDG,
esfuerzos
but
con
we
el
need to
compromiso
strengthen
de no dejar a
efforts
nadie atrás
to
y
not
nosotros
leave anyone
entendemos
back.
que el
And
desarrollo
we
sostenible
understand
cuenta
that
con una
sustainable
dimensión de la
development
cultura,
has
entonces
this
hagamos
cultural
ese trabajo
dimension. So
que nos
let's do
corresponde
the
e
work that we
invitarles a
have
que
to
no nos
do,
volvamos a ver
and
en 40
also
años.
to
Yo tengo
meet
31
again soon.
años
I'm
y me parece que a los
31 years
31 años
old,
es muy
and I
lejos
think that
para
if we're
volver a
going to meet
vernos.
in 40
Así
years,
que
I will be
muchísimas gracias
61.
por este
So
encuentro y
let's
pasen excelente
meet
día.
again very soon. Have an excellent day.